Steven Spielberg is considered one of the greatest filmmakers ever, with such films as Indiana Jones, Jaws, Hook, Jurassic Park, Schindler's List, Saving Private Ryan, and so many more. It's easy to see why people think that. But of all the films that he's ever made, one of his favorite topics is aliens, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, E.T. These were some of the movies that he made that were kind of passion projects or things that were close to his heart. And Disclosure Day is another one. It's kind of one of those, falls into the same category. And he's even talked about it as a sort of third film in this trilogy of alien movies. Close Encounters of the Third Kind being the first one, and then E.T. being the second one, and now Disclosure Day. So where E.T. and Close Encounters talk about kind of if aliens came to Earth and interacted with humans, kind of what would happen, how would they interact, what would that interaction look like? And then, the government keeping that a secret from the rest of the world, so limited experiences and interactions. Disclosure Day asks a completely different question and says, what would happen if everybody knew all at once, all the information that the government has been hiding from the people? What if everybody knew it all at once? What would happen? But it gets more personal. It asks specifically, what would you do? Would that scare you specifically? How would you feel about that? And he says that this film was made based on true events. And I mean, we know that, there's leaked Air Force footage and all these disclosures happening from the government and things like Project Blue Book, where now we know that the government was actually studying UFOs. There's a lot of actual information out there about, what the government has been doing, in regards to studying UFOs and UAPs and aliens and all of this. And so he's kind of approaching this project as if, what if all that information was fully disclosed? Because Spielberg, really believes that aliens are here on Earth right now, or at least that they're real and maybe they're around, and the government has information, but it hasn't. All the information isn't out there, even though he himself has not had an experience. So I went and saw the movie this weekend, and I went to the event that had the live Q&A. And they were kind of talking with him about the film and stuff, and asking him questions about aliens and all this. And this really seems like it's a passion project that he has specifically wanted to make, and kind of, he's kind of got this. It seems like he's kind of got this agenda behind why he wanted to make it, and maybe it's not an agenda in that sense, but he's making this for a specific purpose, and I'll get into that in just a little bit. So what is this movie? What is it about? Spielberg is trying to ask a very specific question. Like I said, he's saying in this movie, if you knew for 100% sure that aliens were real, what would that do? How would that make you feel? He's really trying to prompt these thoughts, because he really believes that they are real. And I'm sure he believes that at some point we will have all the information about, whatever the government is hiding. And so the story follows two protagonists, maybe three protagonists, but mainly two. And it follows a meteorologist from Kansas City and a scientist who works in cybersecurity. And so the cybersecurity scientist, Kellner, that's his last name, Dr. Daniel Kellner, he's just, through his job, was tasked with protecting all of this data about aliens. And he, through being selected, I guess, by this secret group, even though he didn't know he was selected, steals all of the data. And because he just feels compelled, he steals all of the data about the aliens. Every last file, every video, every document, every interview, he steals it all. And he has them on these drives, and he's being chased by this evil corporation. Now, it's not the government per se that's chasing him. It's a government, it's a contractor, I guess, that the government uses to study aliens and all of this. And then throughout the story, he meets up with the meteorologist. And I'm just going to say there's lots of spoilers in this, so I'm just going to start now. Both of them were, I want to say possessed, but that might not be the right word. In the movie, they say gifted with these gifts from the aliens. And they have different abilities. Okay. I won't get into that right now. But they find each other because they both have these gifts, and they're running from the evil corporation. And their job is to release all of these documents before they get caught. So it's kind of a chase movie. It's kind of, I'm speechless. It's a whole lot of Spielberg. Let's just say that. This was his passion project. And if you like Spielberg, it's a lot of that. So where he shines, this movie shines. And where he doesn't quite shine, there's some goofs. So things like the antagonists, throughout the film, they like get really close and get their hands on the documents and then just kind of like give up. And they're like, oh, well, for whatever reason, there's like they get a little pushback and they just give up. And you're like, wait, what? Like multiple times they have the protagonists surrounded and then just kind of like, oh, back up, whatever. We don't want to mess with this or whatever. So funny things like that, where it's like, yeah, that's just kind of Spielberg doing Spielberg things. And that feels goofy, but that's just kind of how the movie is. I was more going into this expecting something like Don't Look Up, where Don't Look Up asks the question, if you knew 100% for sure that the earth was going to be destroyed and all of life was going to end, and you maybe you had a chance to save it, what would you do? And then it follows several different people as they're exploring this question, and it shows how the world gets political because, that's just the nature of it. It does. And it feels like this is kind of accurate to how we as humans would react to something like that. Spielberg says that this movie is kind of Disclosure Day is asking the question, what would happen if all the information was released at once? And maybe he didn't say that exactly, but that's kind of the idea. Except he never really answers that question. I think the question that's being asked is specifically, and this is what he's getting at, if you knew that that aliens were 100% real and on Earth, and we had proof, what would you do? Like, that's why I say it's kind of agenda driven in a way, because he's kind of trying to target you specifically and not just ask this question of like, what would humanity do if, aliens were suddenly just disclosed and, oh, they're 100% real. They're here. We actually have an alien in our possession. Different questions, honestly. And, depending on which question you ask, it's a totally different movie. So I felt like it was a little funny in that regard. And I felt like Spielberg with this movie he kind of revealed that he doesn't fully understand like people and how people react, because even throughout the film, he had one of the protagonist's girlfriend is or was a nun. And so she's like wrestling with these questions of like, well, if there are aliens, like what does that do to God? And it's like, or the idea of God. And honestly kind of tips, Spielberg's hand of like, you don't think very highly of God or Christians, because you don't really understand how Christians think. And I mean, I'm a Christian. I've been a Christian my whole life, and I've been steeped in this. And the response to aliens from Christians, at least from Protestant Christians, is always, yeah, that's demons. That's 100% demons. That's how Christians think. But throughout the movie, he's got these Christians like, oh man, wrestling with the idea like, oh, they're real. Like, what do we do? Christians would not. They wouldn't think like that. They would just be like, those are demons. Like the government has a demon in its possession. Like that's how they would think. And honestly, maybe so. But he has at one point he has a Christian who she goes up to Emily Blunt's character, and realizing that Emily Blunt has this gift from the aliens, or thinking maybe Emily Blunt is an alien, like kneels down and like crosses herself and like kind of starts worshiping Emily Blunt. And that just, maybe there would be some Christians who reacted that way, but like most people, most Christians, especially of Christians of older traditions, are pretty set on the fundamentals, like Jesus is God and you don't worship anybody else besides God. And I don't think that Christians would just quickly be like, oh, the aliens are God. Like they would jump first to, oh, the aliens are demons, So that felt like he didn't quite understand Christians. But then in general, it feels like throughout this movie, he doesn't really understand people. Like, at one point, Emily Blunt starts speaking alien, I guess. Maybe it was math you learn later on. But she starts speaking in clicks and noises. And she does it on air, live. And they cut away. Like, the news station cuts away. But it's leaked, like it's out there. Her talking in some weird foreign language. And everyone starts freaking out. And it's like, I don't think, like, we as people are pretty sheepish. Like, we'll kind of freak out if everybody else is freaking out. But it does kind of take a lot to get us to freak out initially. Like, I'm even remembering during the 2020, that whole thing, like, it took a little while for people to start freaking out. It wasn't just like one person saying, oh, like, it's here, it's affecting, it's going to kill everybody or whatever. And then everybody starts freaking out. It was like slowly everybody started to realize, oh, this is going to be bad. This is going to be bad. And like responding to each other's emotions. Like that's kind of how we're sheepish, I think. Whereas in this movie, Spielberg's like, they see one thing that makes them think that Emily Blunt's speaking in an alien language, and they all freak out and start go buying toilet paper. And it's like, we are sheepish, but not that sheepish. And then there's like funny things that Spielberg likes to do that, I don't know, they kind of bug me a little bit, but it's like, it's just his style, where at the end they're doing like the big disclosure. And again, sorry, spoilers. And everybody in the entire world is watching this one broadcast live. They're all on their phones, and it shows like multiple scenes. These people are here watching it on TV. These people are all on the train watching it on their phones. And every single person is watching it and like listening and paying attention. And it's just not how people are. Like, immediately, even if you had all of the evidence and you put it out there, you would probably get a lot of people who would be watching and probably believing what they see. But nowadays, people are going to be like, that's AI or that's fake or whatever. Like, they're not going to just start believing everything they see. We for better or worse, we don't, as people, we don't do that. So I thought that was kind of a funny Spielberg thing to do, where it's like the whole world is watching all at once. But anyways, there's also some great Spielberg scenes. So there's one scene where Dr. Kellner is going back for his girlfriend, and the house that they were staying at is kind of like a farmhouse out in not in the woods, but out in a field. And they're surrounded by all of the bad guys from the evil corporation. And so he sneaks up and steals a car, and he like drives to the house, and he's being chased. And so he's like, well, like, what am I going to do? Pull up to the front door? Like, you can see this thought process happening. So he just drives through the front, pulls into the house through the wall. She like jumps in, and then it cuts to this awesome scene outside of the house, and the car just goes flying through the window and is like, goes out the window and down this hill. And then all of the other cars come around the house, and it's like this tracking shot, maybe a drone shot. And it's just following all of this action. And it's like, that kind of stuff is like, that's Spielberg. That's good filmmaking from a guy who's been doing this a long time. So there are things that are like, man, that's really good. And then there are other things that are like, man, Why did he do that? I think in the end, you have to view Disclosure Day as a passion project by an aging filmmaker, kind of his last word to the world. Much like Megalopolis with Francis Ford Coppola, and the way that he just kind of pushed it through, self-funded it, made it happen, and everybody thought it was kind of confusing and did not know what he was trying to say in that. Disclosure Day is a little bit like that. It's confusing, it's messy, it's kind of agenda driven, and unless you're already a big fan of Spielberg, this film's probably not going to win you over. Anyways, those are my thoughts on Disclosure Day. Thanks for watching.